Vincent Langley was tired of being brilliant. From the outside, he had everything. Billionaire before 30, tech visionary. His last startup IPO'd so hard it made headlines for weeks. Magazines called him a genius. Investors called him gold. Women called him irresistibly, at least, until the shine wore off and they realized he was more ghost than man. But brilliance came with burn, and Vincent had been burning for years. He hadn't meant to be home that first Thursday when Grace showed up. A deal had collapsed last minute, and instead of storming off to some CEO summit or whiskey bar, he'd stayed in and brewed his own coffee. The quiet felt strange, too wide. Then she walked in. She didn't flinch like most people did when they saw him up close. She just froze, nodded, and got to work. He watched her move from room to room, methodical and focused. She didn't snoop, didn't stall, didn't look at him like he was a paycheck or a puzzle to solve. That's what caught his attention. Not her face though. She was beautiful in an unpolished way, but her silence, her calm, the way she made herself so small and yet filled the room. Vincent had grown used to noise. Parties, panels, premieres. His world was loud and fast and full of people talking at him, around him, through him. But this woman cleaned his space like she was taming something, and it felt good to watch her do it. He didn't say anything that first day, but after she left, he checked the security footage and watched the moment again just to make sure it had really happened. The next week, he stayed home on purpose. He didn't have a plan. He just wanted to see her, to confirm that the stillness he felt wasn't imagined. He hadn't expected her to challenge him. He hadn't expected to feel seen. And he definitely hadn't expected coffee to become the highlight of his week. He started clearing his Thursdays. It was a strange thing to admit to himself that he, a man with 3 assistants and 2 phones, had begun guarding a half-hour window just to drink coffee with his housekeeper. But there was something about Grace that slowed the world down. She didn't ask about his companies or money. She didn't comment on the photos of him online. She didn't treat him like anything other than a man who needed his granite countertops polished and his plants watered. And Vincent, used to being the most interesting person in the room, found himself completely fascinated by her instead. The way she smiled without showing all her teeth. The way she paused before answering serious questions. The way she never rushed but was never idle. He found himself wondering about her when she was gone. Where she went, what music she listened to, who she used to be before the gloves and buckets. He Googled her once. Nothing came up. It made him weirdly happy. She was his mystery. One Thursday, when she brought pastries, he almost asked her to sit longer, to stay for lunch. But he stopped himself. Pushing too hard would ruin it. He didn't want to break whatever they were building. But the truth was, he was starting to depend on her. Not just the routine, the presence. The way she made his walls feel like they weren't all built to keep people out. He began cleaning up after himself more, folding blankets, closing drawers. Not because he cared, but because he knew she'd notice. And he wanted her to know he noticed her too. It was ridiculous, but also real. She never stayed longer than she was paid for. Never gave him more than the moment. But when she walked out, the apartment felt wrong. He hadn't felt that kind of silence in years. And for the first time, he realized how lonely success could be. He didn't tell anyone about Grace. Not his assistant, not his therapist, not his closest friend from MIT. It wasn't a secret out of shame. It was something else, like if he spoke it aloud, he might jinx it. Or worse, it might get dragged into the spotlight, and she'd vanish. And he didn't want her to vanish. One Thursday, she didn't laugh at his usual joke. She looked tired. Her shoulders sagged beneath her uniform, and when she smiled, it didn't reach her eyes. Long day, he asked. She hesitated, then sat down, slowly, double shifts. A client canceled last minute, and I had to fill the gap with another place across town. He stared at her, the weight of her words pressing something cold and sharp into his chest. Why didn't you just take the day off? Grace gave a humorless laugh. Rent doesn't take days off. Vincent leaned forward. What if I paid you double for the same time here? She looked at him, and something flickered in her eyes. Disappointment, offense. No, Vincent, she said, voice even. Don't do that. Don't try to buy what we have. He opened his mouth, then shut it. She stood. I like coming here, because it feels normal. Clean, honest, don't make it complicated. He nodded. Okay. Grace softened just a little, but I appreciate the offer. She left early that day. He didn't stop her. Later that night, Vincent sat alone on his leather sofa, staring at the untouched piano in the corner. His mother had insisted he learn to play as a child. He was decent, but hadn't touched the keys in years. He got up and lifted the lid. The keys were still clean. She always dusted them carefully. He played a single note. It echoed in the silence. He wondered what Grace would say if she saw him now, fingers hovering over ivory, unsure of his next move. The next Thursday, she was different, brighter, like sleep had found her again. Morning, he said, offering her a new mug, this one not white, but pale blue, with a small chip in the handle. She examined it. This isn't your usual one, he smiled. It's the one I made in a pottery class 3 years ago. Hideous, right? She laughed. It's charming. Looks like it survived something. Vincent looked at her. Some things are better after the cracks. They sipped in silence for a while. Then he asked, what would you call it? Your company, if you ever started it. Grace blinked. Why? Because I think about it, he said, and I want to know. She watched him, unsure if she should share it. But then she said, Grace & Co. He grinned. Perfect. I made a logo once, she added. It's on a napkin somewhere. I'd like to see it. You'd laugh. I'd admire it, he said. You built something that matters, even if it's still in your head. The next week brought rain. Not just the light drizzle Manhattan was known for. This was a full downpour, trench coat clinging, cab hailing mess. Vincent stood by the window, watching sheets of water blur the skyline. He checked the time, 9:04 a.m., no knock. He felt something stir anxiety. He'd never felt that before over someone being 4 minutes late. But with Grace, everything felt magnified in the silence. The air too still, the room too clean without her presence moving through it. Then the elevator dinged. She stepped in, soaked to the bone, rain dripping from her sleeves. She removed her hood, shook off the water, and smiled sheepishly. Subway delay. Got caught between stations. He took one look at her and disappeared into the hall, returning with a thick towel and one of his old sweatshirts. Change, now, he said, handing them over. Grace blinked. You know I can't wear that while working. You're not working today, he said. You're staying warm and drinking coffee. Non-negotiable. She hesitated, then took the sweatshirt. When she returned from the bathroom, hair towel dried and face softer, she looked at him differently, like he'd crossed an invisible line, but not in the wrong direction. They sat on the couch instead of at the kitchen counter. Vincent had set up a tray, 2 mugs, honey, milk, and a new kind of pastry, coconut rolls from a place she'd once mentioned in passing. You remembered, she said, touched. I listen, he replied. You'd be amazed how little people expect that from me. They sipped quietly. The storm outside became background noise. She looked at him. Why are you doing this? What? Spending time with me? Asking questions? Buying pastries? It's not part of my job description. He held her gaze. Because when you're here, the world feels less fake, and I think I've forgotten how to be real with most people. She didn't answer right away, but when she stood to leave, she said, You don't have to try so hard, Vincent. And before she stepped into the elevator, she added, You're already more real than most. He stood frozen for a long time after she left, the echo of the elevator door sounding like a quiet promise. He turned back to the living room, took out a notebook, and wrote 3 words across a blank page. Grace & Co. Then, beneath it, the world doesn't need another empire. It needs something that lasts. That was chapter 2 of Dust and Diamonds, a glimpse into the man behind the glass walls and glowing headlines. Vincent Langley isn't used to real connection, but Grace is changing that one Thursday, one coffee, one honest moment at a time. If this chapter moved you, if you're starting to feel what they feel, don't miss what's coming next. Subscribe to HaHaBots for more beautifully told stories just like this, crafted with heart, depth, and a little magic in between. And stay tuned. Chapter 3 of Dust and Diamonds is on the way. Trust us, things are about to get even more complicated. Only on HaHaBots, where the stories stay with you.